I think we've all enjoyed the trip. I think so. But these folks here have real lives. They have spouses and kids and things they're not taking care of back home for a long time away. And they're here because they love the ideas, they love journalism, they love uncovering the truth, especially truth that the mainstream media sometimes covers up. And, you know, they're fun people, and I think you were fun back. But it is work to be on for 10 days in a row. And, you know, it's energy and it's effort. And I want to say thanks not only to David and Sheila and Amanda and Katie and Tanvir, who had to leave early, but to their families for giving them up to us for a week and a half. So will you join me in thanking my friends for being here? I think we're making a difference. And the fact that we have so many folks from around the world that we didn't have in our Rebel universe a year ago, from South Africa, from Australia, from the United Kingdom, that didn't happen a year ago. And I think it's because we're talking about universal themes that are of interest, whether you're in Australia or the United Kingdom or Toronto. You're worried about the effects of Islamification, of censorship. And I think that we're living up to our name, the Rebel. We hire some rebellious personalities who speak truth to power, sometimes get in a little bit of trouble for it, but we're going to keep doing it. And on that note, I haven't told her yet, but I'm going to invite Katie Hopkins to give you a brief presentation on her 2 special missions. You'll obviously be able to see the videos that we edit and upload in the days ahead. But while we were doing our more safe and secure and low-risk activities, Katie was going into a high-risk zone. It really was. I mean, I don't want to be too dramatic, but she was going places where there have been stabbings and even kidnappings. And she kept her courage and she kept her wits about her. And thank God she's back safely, along with Eitan and Oliver. But let me let you hear from her directly, my friend, Katie Hopkins.
Thank you, boss. And he says, I'm going to ask her to talk about 2 things. And my brain's going like a little, you know, filing system. Brrr, what is it he's going to say? What is he going to say? Who knows? So I'll give a brief recap on today. Went to Hebron, which I think is probably the area that it seems to be has probably the most tension in Israel and Palestine. It is an area where it's a settlement area, but there's a heavy Palestinian kind of, I would guess, community that live there. And when you look into the stats of the place, there's 200,000, I believe, Palestinians or so that live in the area. There's only kind of 500 Jews left in that area. And the tension between them is palpable, unlike any other area that I've seen. When we tried to book the transport to go there, we were kind of shopping around for transport, and the lady said, well, do you want the bulletproof vehicle or do you want the stone-proof vehicle? Well, I guess I'm not going to know till after. Anywho, ask me later. If I'm still alive, I'll let you know. So we got a vehicle up there, but it was a glorious thing in some ways as well. I always find places where there's a lot of tension, there's also a lot of truth. So as we got into Hebron, our Jewish driver, she was very clear that she would not be crossing over into the Palestinian side. That was very clear. But when we got there, there was this whole group of young, attractive, fit men on the steps there. So obviously we got out to stay. And they turn out to be young men who are the next generation of the IDF. So they're trainees or potential trainees from all around the world that are now looking to join the Israeli Defense Force because they've seen what they're doing and they like the look of it and they want to belong. And I heard accents on us. I was like, where are you from? North London. Where are you from? East of England. A whole bunch of British lads coming out to join the IDF because they want to belong to something that matters, and because at 18 they want to start fighting back for the culture that they can't speak about in their own country. And I thought that was a really terrific thing. They were a whole bunch of fun, and it kind of filled me with this verve for this idea of standing strong and this next generation that's going to take on the fight. We went to an area where the 10-month-old girl, Eitan, help me with the name? Good. Okay, totally blaming Aitan for that. A lovely 10-month-old girl. She was in her stroller. Her father was pushing her. This was in the Jewish area of the settlement. And a Palestinian sniper from one of the homes. Yes, Aitan. Shalhemet. Shalhemet. Hevet. Good. That was her name. Shalhevet. Yes. Anywho, 10-month-old baby in her stroller, and her father was pushing her to the play park, or taking her for a walk. And a Palestinian sniper from the Palestinian houses just there. So I was stood where she was shot, but the Palestinian sniper just picked her off inside her stroller that her father was pushing. 10-month-old, so she died. Her father was also injured. But that's indicative as a story of the way that the level of animosity, the tension, is kept at such a level, because there's always a sense that you could just be plucked away from your life by the Palestinians who live overlooking the Jews. And then when we travel to the Palestinian area, the same arguments but the other way round. So the Palestinians would complain that, oh, look at these Jewish houses. They throw their litter at us. They throw their dirty eggs at us, their dirty water. The same arguments but the other way round. Now, interestingly, in terms of this idea of a new generation standing strong, where this little 10-month-old girl was sniped off by the Palestinians, the Israelis haven't just gone up there and bulldozed the whole house and the friends of that house. They have done that with bulldozers. They went straight in. They've also then built a nursery. So there is now a nursery in the spot where that little girl was killed, because the Israelis are determined that the Palestinians will not make them afraid and will not make them leave. And I found that to be a really powerful message today. And then as we crossed from H1 to H2 and crossed over into the Palestinian area through more security, more fences, we had to get past the checkpoint. So we're crossing into the Palestinian area. Our Jewish driver wasn't coming with us, obviously, and we got to the checkpoint. So I bounced up ahead because I'm just the random Brit woman. And the guy said, "What's your religion?" And it took me a minute to stick the right face on and just go, "Oh, no, not really. Well, I'm Christian. Wow." Because I don't think I've ever been asked that before at a checkpoint. I've been asked what my nationality is. I've been told that I'm not going to be leaving the country, South Africa, and had my passport taken. But I've never been asked what my religion is. So it was a kind of crazy idea. So I was busily saying that I was from the UK. Thank you so much for letting us be here. Oh, yes, I don't really have a religion, but I suppose you call me Christian. Waving the boys through, trying to wave my Jewish friend Aitan through before he had to overexpose himself, as it were, to the guards there. But anyway, we got on into Palestine. And I think what was interesting about being there, apart from trying to lose Aitan and Aitan feeling a little bit scared and wanting to be called by a different name, at which point I settled on, what name did I go for at one point? Jordan. I went for Jordan. They were like, "What's he called?" I went, "Jordan." And then one point a Palestinian said to Aitan, it was the only moment I was properly worried on our trip, said, "I recognize your face, I know you." I was like, right, we're getting out of here. But it was perfectly fine. But the truth is that the animosity, the hatred is really, you can feel it in the air. Anywhere you walk, this side hates that side. But it's the Israelis who have the stories that I would say are making me feel hopeful. The Israelis have the stories of rebuilding, of standing strong. The Israeli Defense Force gathering in strength, recruits coming from all over the globe. There's that real sense of resilience that I absolutely, I was so drawn to today, I can't tell you. And then there was a small diplomatic incident, which obviously I'll be telling the boss about privately at some point, but there was a mainstream media TV crew in the road. And it turns out, look, not so long ago, a Palestinian guy stabbed an Israeli soldier, okay? And as a result, he was shot. And then another IDF guy came over to help defend the situation and also shot the guy while he was on the ground. And unfortunately, that guy died. But hey, he stabbed the Israeli Defense Forces, so I say no loss. Anyway, he went to prison for 9 months for doing his job. And he was let out, I believe, yesterday. So he was let out yesterday. So what we found today at the spot where the Israeli Defense Force soldier, where the incident happened and our IDF guy was put away for 9 months, he's been let out. Now what we found today was, of course, the mainstream media. And of course, what are the mainstream media doing? They're whipping up the tension. This is typical, this is the IDF, they go around slaughtering innocent Palestinians, they've been let out, how is it a 9-month sentence for a life? Why is this possible? Media crews, camera, microphone, listening to the Palestinian tell his stories of woe, missing out the bit where the Palestinian stabbed someone. So I bowled on in. So we will be providing you with the footage of me rather aggressively shouting down the mainstream media and offering the alternative narrative that I think it's important we hear, that if you stab a soldier, expect to be dead and expect your family's homes to be bulldozed as well. My Jewish friends ran away down the road at this point, but it was all fine. It all ended happily and well. There's no problem. No one got arrested. There was one point where Oliver said, should we stop and just organize them? No, Oliver, keep walking. Just keep walking, keep walking. So it was all good. But I think what we're trying to do with these visits, trying to do by going into places other journalists won't go, is not only be true to the brand, which is that we tell the stories that other people won't tell, but also we absolve ourselves from some of the criticism we may otherwise get, that we only saw one side of the story. Because actually being with Palestinians in the refugee camp 8 generations later, or being with Palestinians on the other side of a wall, then complaining about the wall, and I asked them, well, what's behind the wall? Oh, it's called Martyrs Street. Oh, well, funny old thing. The Jewish decided they might fence off you from Martyrs Street, call them crazy. By going there and addressing those problems face on, we have then given both sides of the story, at least prepared to listen to another side, or at least prepared to ask the questions straight to the faces of those people who will tell the mainstream media narrative the lies. And I think that's an important role that we all have here at Rebel. So I suppose my highlight of the trip, apart from the Bethlehem and the refugee camp and today in Hebron, and being able to address these things and seeing the IDF full of life and with a new generation starting. I think the highlight for this trip for me has been the way that it feels this movement is really growing. The way that as we go about the place, there's so much support from the taxi driver today who did the last 3 hours for free because she's a supporter and she's never heard people speak the way we speak. From our lovely tour guides who are able to suddenly speak freely because they have a busload of people they know won't mind really what they say. Whatever your opinion is, we welcome it. And from having all of you guys who we send out kind of reinvigorated, and we also draw from and we draw support from. Tanvir sent me a little message, I know he's gone now, sent me a little message overnight saying that for him this trip has been like a refueling in his tank. And he goes out more enthused and more passionate than ever to really try and make a difference. And for me, that's what this trip has been all about. It's about like reinvigorating ourselves, reminding ourselves we're not mad in a world that seems increasingly mad all the time, and being able to go out and make a difference. And the guy today, one last thing, he was the spokesperson for the Jewish communities in Hebron. He said, what really makes a difference is knowing what you believe, standing by your word, and being keen to share your story with others. So it's that same message over again. Resist the narrative, know your truths, and stand strong. And that's really my plea and my thank you to you all for joining us in that fight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend. Amanda joined the Rebel recently. She has political views. She's called the Hollywood conservative, but she comes more from the fun side of the business, the entertaining side, not just the dour, heavy-duty side. And you know this because you heard her. She sang a different song on each bus, by the way. And other than Sheila and David and me, no one else got the luxury of hearing both songs, and they were great. Amanda is so proud to be an American. She was so insistent that we went to the U.S. Embassy, and I was delighted to tell her that Ronnie was way ahead of her. And even though we did not go into the embassy, which would have been a whole thing, I thought it was appropriate that we were there on Independence Day. I thought that was great, Ronnie. Thanks for setting that up. And there was a little bit of a spontaneous Star Spangled Banner, including by the Canadians. So I thought that was a nice touch. So Amanda, it was a delight to have you. And this was your first trip to Israel. And you're, if I may characterize you, I think you're a little less heavy duty in the crazy politics as some of us, but you, I think, are more severely normal than, say, David or me. So may I invite you to come up and give some of your thoughts as someone who is articulating a contrarian view in Hollywood, which is so hard to do. How does this fit into your view of things? Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. I've lived in Los Angeles for 12 years, so I don't think that makes me normal. Just to clarify. The fact that I have remained there says that something about me is a little crazy. But yes, so being the Hollywood conservative, I think some of you know my background. I was in the music industry for 9 years, and in January of 2016, not to sound trite or corny, but I was a singer. And I decided that during that election year when there was a potential for Hillary Clinton to be the president, I decided that my voice could be better used in politics. So I switched over to politics and eventually landed at the Rebel. I think I began with you guys in February? Yeah. So, but being there in the belly of the beast in Los Angeles, of course, I see the lunacy and the hypocrisy and just the maniacal, all-consuming hatred that so much of Hollywood has for people like us. Because they don't know us, they don't care to know us, they don't care what the plights are of middle Canadians, middle Americans, normal Brits. And so I decided that being there in Hollywood, that I would try to be a voice of reason. I get drowned out most of the time within my community, but you know, my videos have a certain audience, and a few times I've had the editors suggest that I word things a different way because sometimes I tend to be a little irreverent, but it's my attempt at humor, so I hope you guys see that in my videos. Yes, this was my first trip to Israel. I'm almost ashamed that I have not been before now. I definitely wish that I had been before now. However, I don't think that I could have picked a better group and better leaders to be led by for my first trip to Israel. When I was showing people the original itinerary, the public itinerary, they were like, oh my gosh, you're gonna be exhausted. How are you doing all this? But you know, you guys somehow managed to cram it in and you kept us on a tight schedule, and it was fantastic. I saw things that, you know, I've really only read about in the Bible and in the news. And so it was fantastic to see those things in person, and especially the visit to the wall. Was that yesterday? My days are running together. Yeah, with Danny Tirza. That gave me a lot of talking points to take home to my country, because it's so much more than illegal immigration. It's drug trafficking, it's terrorism. You know, we are constantly hearing about Hamas and Hezbollah and Boko Haram, who are building cells in Mexico and infiltrating our border and coming to the United States. And these are sleeper cells that one day we will all know where they are and why they are here, because something will happen. So, yeah, so my first trip to Israel, it's been fantastic getting to know all of you. You're all freaking awesome. The highlight of my trip has been everything that we've seen in Jerusalem. Growing up, good old Southern Baptist. You know, I grew up reading about these things in Sunday school, and since Sunday school and learning about those things, of course, hearing about the political implications over the last 10 or 20 years. Today was incredibly powerful at the Holocaust Museum. I've been to the Holocaust Museum in DC, and I don't know how you say which one is better or worse. I mean, you can't even use those terms when it comes to that. They're incomparable. This one brought home the issue of how it affected Jews specifically. The Holocaust Museum in DC is more about just like the atrocities of World War II and the Holocaust in general. What else did I want to say? I have notes, but they're over on my phone. Can you pass me my phone? I'm not so great at memorizing talking points, which is why on air sometimes I blank out. Oh, I wanted to read. I have it open to my text messages because I wanted to read something. So I was texting with my friend Drew, who lives in Los Angeles, and he went to Marrakesh, Morocco last year. And as some of you know, I'm going to Morocco from here. And so I was texting him about, if I should worry about the copious amounts of I Heart Israel stuff in my luggage going into a Muslim country. And he's like, I'll skim over what he said there, but he said, don't go in wearing your Trump gear. avoids speaking about him. And then he says this. And on those politics, because of course I decided to debate him, and so he just texted me back, and on those politics we will agree to disagree. Go figure. I am sad that Muslims hate Trump because it's unnecessary and only fuels the fire for another 9/11 type event, which is a lie. It'll happen anyway if they want it to, which is no good for anyone, but he chooses to stoke the fire and, yes, keep the MAGA hat hidden. He chooses to stoke the fire, which I find interesting because the last president that we had, Barack Obama, did everything he could to placate to Palestinian and terrorist groups. He was spineless and cowardly, and it damaged our relationship with Israel. And I have been so inspired by the rehabilitation of the U.S. relationship with Israel and the strengthened relationship between our two world leaders, between President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. But these people, like this is a friend of mine, friend-ish. But this is most of the people who watch CNN and MSNBC. I go to Drew's house and he's got CNN on repeat. And I'm just like, how? He's a smart dude. But we all who have been here and have experienced the things that we have and the things that we've seen, we all now have tangible talking points. We all have experienced things. We heard from experts. We have witnessed things with our own eyes that people back home may not ever have a chance to see. So it is our responsibility and our obligation to deliver these messages back home to our friends. And don't be shy, don't be afraid. I've lost a couple friends over the course of the years, and for someone who is as brash and irreverent and loud-mouthed as I am, if I've only lost 2 friends, then you shouldn't be worried. So everybody, thanks so much for having me and welcoming me into the group, and thanks to you guys for being such awesome colleagues. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. Sheila, I'd love to hear your thoughts on your second trip to Israel, and maybe you can tell us about your tattoo.
Well, first off, if you want to know about my tattoo, you can ask later if someone's interested. I'll keep it short because David's going to bore you, take up a lot of time, and your opportunity to ask questions. Yes, this is my second trip to Israel, a far different trip than last time. The first thing I want to say is that I think while this was a fact-finding mission, I think it was a chance for all of us journalists to reconnect and to actually connect for the first time. And I've never met Amanda before. I've never met Katie before. I've spent far too much time with David. So, you know, it was good for us, all of us, to get together and experience this as a team. But on the other hand, it's also terrific to see so many like-minded people who are willing to spend their hard-earned money to have this experience with us. So I genuinely thank you for that. I never forget that you are the people who are cheering me on every day and who are making sure the lights are still on in my house. I guess one of the things that I noticed this year, or that struck me, and maybe it struck you too, as I was walking around Yad Vashem, was I was reflecting on the change in the use of language over this past year, especially in the mainstream media, and we'll see it from mainstream media journalists, how they so flippantly throw around the word Nazi or Hitler-esque, and they'll throw it around and they'll use it against Donald Trump or any conservative that does something that they disagree with. And when I was there, I was struck by how despicable it truly is for them to do that. When you see that real evil, you cannot leave that place without a sense that there is true evil, horror in the world. And for them to just use those words to malign their political enemies, it really speaks to just how truly terrible they are, to diminish the Holocaust. And we saw the atrocities of the Holocaust together today. Last year I had been to Sderot. Last year, like this year, I was struck by the conditions that people like me, moms like me, have to raise their children in. That was hard last year. But this year, seeing that playground, while it is still shocking and sad that that's how children have to live there, when the mayor told us that his community is growing, his community is thriving, and that people want to live there, that's truly an analogy for the state of Israel, that when your neighbors want you dead, and they're doing everything they can to kill you, truly the only answer to that is to live and to grow and be happy. And I think the state of Israel serves as a stark reminder to its miserable neighbors about how freedom works and how happiness works. And I think Israel acts as that sort of barometer for them about what could be if people were free. This year also, seeing the real effects of terror on the Gaza border with the fire balloons. Some of you may or may not know, I'm a farmer. And we talked about this on David's Rebel Roundup. Seeing those crops burned for those farmers, that's a real psychological terror for farmers. Because I think farmers, whether they know it or not, they're probably religious. When you look up the sky every day and you're counting on God to give you good weather or rain, and to see their hard work burned to the ground like that. That was hard on me to see that. And I think it's a psychological attack on the people of the state of Israel because they feel that extra layer of ties to the land that they live on. The Temple Mount. How about that? I'd never been to the Temple Mount before. I was here last time. We never made it up there. And one of the things that struck me, not then when we were up there, but later on in the day, I was struck by the dichotomy between the two religious traditions that we experienced during the day. Jess, you were with me. So up on the Temple Mount, we were told, no stopping to pray. Don't even utter a prayer. Not a Christian prayer, not a Jewish prayer. And we saw the soldiers escorting the Jews through the Temple Mount. And later on in the day, Jess and Amanda and I snuck back to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And when we were there, we saw 3 Muslim women in full burqa, top to bottom, in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the most holy place for me as a Christian, wandering around freely. Nobody cared if they prayed. Nobody cared if they went into the holy sites. Because
that's not entirely true. It pissed me off.
I was hoping for some sort of Holy Land conversion miracle, so I wasn't chasing them away. But I mean, it spoke to the tolerance of the Christians who were there protecting those sites. And I think for me, later on in the day, it was that sort of moment alone where I realized what a difference there is in those two faith traditions. And I think that's it. I think David's going to monopolize your ears. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. No, I really will keep it brief because I really want to hear what everybody has to say and hear your questions. And I just want to personally thank Dr. Ron Wexler. This has been an incredible trip. Not just the touristy stuff. We saw, stuff behind the curtain. And I'm going to, personally speaking, I'm going to say I've been of 2 minds of this trip throughout. And one was just the love of this place. We've seen, thanks to Ron and the guests that he invited to shepherd us along, the economic success, the academic success, the military success of this tiny little country in the Middle East, this island of democracy and tolerance in a sea of intolerance and dictatorship. And it's just so heartwarming to see it play out. And then, on the other hand, I started getting angry and almost depressed and I guess frustrated because, as you all know, folks, we see from the the news coverage of Israel, and we see from how the academic world treats Israel, and we see these ludicrous movements such as BDS, and we see the word bandied about apartheid, including what I always find so personally interesting is in Toronto until very recently in the Gay Pride Parade, we had a group called Queers Against Israeli Apartheid. Can you imagine that? They, claiming that this nation experiences apartheid, and these are gays saying this, and this is the only country in the Middle East that has 2 gay pride parades a year. And then when you think about it, you know there's no apartheid. So if the name of your very organization is based on a lie, because there is no apartheid here, then what's really behind it? And for the life of me, I can't think of anything else than good old-fashioned anti-Semitism. And, at the end of the day, what brought me back over to a feeling of positivity was just the fact that, and you saw it from all the Israelis we met, whether they're with the IDF or whether they're a worker on a kibbutz, you get this sense of resiliency that, at the end of the day, they don't care what world opinion is about Israel and about boycott movements and what the world press says and what the United Nothings do in terms of sanctions, that this nation is here and that it's not going anywhere, and neither are its people. And so it's like a Godzilla thickness of skin that, the sticks and stones, it has no effect. And guess what? In case you want to go one step further, we're also a military superpower. And I think the punctuation on this was that visit to Yad Vashem today. I mean, you saw that. I mean, that was my 3rd visit to that museum. And it's hard to walk out of there without a tear in your eye. I don't know about you folks, I'm only human. And, once again, I mean, there's so many iconic images in that museum. The one that strikes me the most, and maybe you saw it, it was a large blown up photo, and it's a mother hugging her child, her daughter, as a soldier from point blank, less than a meter away, is about to execute them. And I thought, it's not just the atrocity that's about to happen in the nanosecond after the shutter went, but the fact that this soldier, this was a badge of honor to be photographed this way. It's like a professional stage photograph, that this was something really great that he was doing. I think this brought home the level of horror of the Holocaust. In any event, not to get too dramatic about things, I'll just end it here. I'm not an Israeli, and I'm not Jewish, but from what I can see of this country, and I think this might be the unofficial credo, the unofficial slogan of the people here, that really look upon never again, not as just some marketing slogan, but as something very meaningful and profound, that what happened less than 80 years ago will never again happen. And it's simply this: Israel, worth fighting for, worth dying for. Thank you very much.
If you want to see our videos from Israel, there's an easy place to find them: rebelisrael.com.